Hello everyone, and today I'll be reviewing the MacBook Air M1 version, the cheapest one, the 999 USD or 1449 Sing dollars version. It is absolutely one of the most affordable MacBooks you can get in the market and one of the cheapest of its class, considering all the other laptops that are available out there. And what am I going to test today? On my table today is some of the newest camera. This is the Canon R5 and this is the GFX100. What do they have in common is that the Canon R5 has the worst to edit video files you can get in the market. This is the 422 4K 50p or 60p files that are terrible to run on most desktops and laptops now. And this is the GFX100, which has the highest megapixel RAW files except for the Phase 1 150. If not, this is like the second highest RAW file in the market, and if you have tried to load these RAW files into Lightroom, they will lag really badly, and for a 8GB RAM laptop like this, it will probably crash. So today's video is about the M1 and editing the video files from the R5 and the RAW files from the GFX100. Let's see how this Apple MacBook Air performs. I'm Richard and welcome to ZB Productions. Let's see how it performs now. Firstly, you can see in this small little window that I have recorded from my screen. By the way, I'm recording now, so I'm already taking some resource away from the MacBook. There is some video files, and all these video files is 4K, 422, 10-bit C-Log files from the R5. And if you try to replay them on your computer, they will lag terribly. So let's click on one of these files and try to replay them. You can see how smooth the replay is. And also notice that it's replaying a HEVC file, a H.265 file, natively inside a player itself. So that is really, so smooth for the playback. Now let's load it into Final Cut Pro, which by the way is a native program to the M1 Mac. I just explained a little bit on this. So today, the M1 Mac is of course using a slightly different code, a different processor. It is not the usual Intel code base, or should I say the Intel programs. So any software that is not made for the M1 Mac will go through something called a translation process called the Rosetta 2. And for this Final Cut Pro, it is a native software, which means it did not go through translation. It is working off directly from the Mac hardware. Later, when you see Lightroom, it is running off Rosetta 2. So there is a performance hit of maybe 20 or 30%. So I'm not too sure, but there is a performance hit for that. But for the Final Cut Pro, it is native performance to the MacBook Air. So let's see how this MacBook Air edits, EOS R5 video file that can't even be edited with my $3,000-$4,000 gaming laptop. So let's take a look at how it performs. Just now the same file, 0410. Let's play. Perfectly smooth playback. Now let's go to the view and you can see this is better quality. And if I was to blow this up to full screen and I play back, still very, very smooth. And see, if I jump between video files like here, notice the color change because I applied a profile for the other one. No lag, still really smooth. So what happened is that this is a log file. So let me apply a C-Log, converter to it, a LUT to it. Oh, wrong one. Now I applied a LUT for it and play back again. No lag. Now, of course, all these are not so big deal. The bigger ones are the transitions, the effects. So let's take a look at one of the effects I applied earlier. Just to note that, how do I put it? Most video software do a bit of rendering behind the moment you start adding a bit of transition. So there is a small little lag when you add them in. But when you play them back, it's really smooth. Take a look at this. Zoom transition. Of course, this is a very bad one. I'm just demonstrating you with some random files I took with my friend. This, by the way, Riiyuukii. I'll put her link below if you'd like to see her Gawr Gura. But yes, you can see I'm editing H.265 R5 files, 422, 10-bit, C-Log, 50 frames per second. If you look at here, video frame rate, 50 frames per second without any lag. Now, there is sometimes lag if you do something like this where you stack 2 or 3 video files together. I noticed that Final Cut is trying to, read files in the stack or something. There is some lag during those times. But if not, normally there is no lag and it is really editable. For a 989 USD laptop to edit 4K footage, and not forgetting the latest 4K footage from the EOS R5, This is very impressive. In fact, if you buy the R5, buying this laptop just to edit the R5 video may be worth if you are trying to create content out of this camera itself. Now, so much for video editing. Let's take a look at now photo editing with Lightroom. So let me close Final Cut Pro here and launch Lightroom Classic. Lightroom Classic is not, as I said, not optimized for the MacBook M1 version chips. So what you're seeing is a bit of translation, a bit of, I would say, as loss of performance because it's not a native app. Now you can see this is of course Lightroom. Dragging my Lightroom around here. This is of course Lightroom now, and let's take a look at how it performs with the GFX files. Take a look at the library. Let's look at the metadata, and you can see here this is a GFX100 file and shot with the GF110. Now, these files are massive 100 megapixel files, and they will lag really bad if you try to do anything with them normally, especially on the 8GB RAM laptop. So let's take a look at one of the files that I have randomly edited, like this one here. Notice I already applied all the color effects, and it looks quite fast to that file itself. Let me do a copy here. And let me go to the file previously just now. Go back to the previous file. I press paste, applies the entire effect. And there is a little bit of loading, and here it is. How fast the application of the effects are. Let me shift the sliders around. I would say the sliders are not the most responsive in the world, but considering this is a GFX100, which, you know, the performance here I see is the same as my i7 8-core processor, or is it 6-core processor from my gaming laptop. This is very impressive coming from a 999 USD Mac itself. It is very smooth if you ask me. More than enough to edit my GFX100 files. This is of course not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is when you do brushing in Lightroom, and that is normally damn laggy. So let me apply exposure, clarity, and the haze. Normally these three combination does introduce a bit of lag when you try to brush around. Let's brush around this file itself. Now you notice there is of course a little bit of lag, but if you ask me, very, very acceptable performance for something that only costs $999 and with only 8GB of RAM. You know, let me delete away the thing again, and here you get it. This is a very impressive performance. Let me drop a radar filter on her face itself, reduce the clarity and the haze, just pull a filter, invert this filter itself. You know, as you can see now here, this editing is very doable. This is a GFX100 file, and if I zoom in 100%, you will see really, you know, the quality of the camera itself coming out of this GFX100 files. Really, I'm very impressed with the M1 MacBook Air. Considering it can edit my GFX100 file, you know, without any problem, no major hiccups. And also edit my R5 video files with not much, you know, complaints and issues. I think this MacBook Air is really superb. I think Apple really had a home run with this particular processor chip that they created. Now, of course, not everything is rosy. I did notice that there were some bugs. Firstly, the MacBook Air doesn't run the Lightroom library function very well. I did notice that when you were trying to switch across photos, they do lag at times, and the lag sometimes can be quite bad. It takes quite some time to load. And also I noticed that one of my hard disks just doesn't work with the MacBook Air M1 chip. I tried to plug in my HP P700 hard disk, solid state drive, external versions to the MacBook Air, and it just doesn't work. I mean, I plug it in, I can write, I cannot read for some reason. So there is some bug to it. And also I noticed that the performance of drives plugged into the MacBook Air is slightly slower than stated, slightly slower than my Intel Windows machine. That's something that I also note on that. But overall, if you ask me, the performance for a $999 Mac is superb. And you know, if you are in the market to buy a portable, cheap laptop to edit your files on the go, I think the M1 MacBook Air, the cheapest version with no additional add-on, 8GB of RAM, 256GB of internal storage, probably can suffice for portable editing. Now, what's the best thing of the MacBook Air? Notice there is no fan, so everything is cooled, passively through the outer case of the laptop. And not only that, I'm lifting it up now, it's really light, and no power supply was connected to it during the entire review. This is very impressive. If you try editing any high resolution RAW in Lightroom, using any laptop with no power connected, it will lag way worse than what you have seen just now. So I did everything without additional power, running off just whatever power is in the battery, and I get a performance that you can't even get, because a i7 or i9 core off the power supply will start to throttle and slow down significantly, especially when you see the power gauge above is going below 50% already. Most laptops out there, especially gaming laptops, would have throttled really badly and performed way worse than whatever this MacBook Air has done just now. Now, that's about it for today's review. Of course, I'll be exploring further with the MacBook Air and really see what kind of issues this thing will bring to content creators, to photographers, to videographers. Because so far, everything looks good, but occasionally there are some hiccups that are really weird, like Final Cut Pro cannot relink my media for some reason. And then Lightroom lags in certain condition, and hard disk that just doesn't work properly with the MacBook M1 version. So there are small little things that will happen, and I will investigate throughout the entire week or two, and maybe create a follow-up video on, is this M1 Mac really worth to buy? And if you ask me today, now with my preliminary results, I think the MacBook Air M1 version is a solid laptop to get for the purpose of editing photos on the move and even editing videos on the move. And that's about it for today's review. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.